Hey, this is Eric, and this video is a recording of a webinar I did on the topic of AI in education. Well, again, thank you so very much for joining me here this morning. I'm looking forward to learning with you today. Before we get started, I want to make sure everybody can get to the resource document that we're going to be taking a look at here today. So up on the screen, you should see a bit.ly link that is bit.ly/Kurtz, my last name, -AI. So bit.ly/Kurtz-AI. That's going to get you to a Google document that has all of the resources. Well, it's got a lot more than we're going to fit into our 50-minute session here today. But what that document should be looking like is this. So if you're winding up in a document that looks like that, AI tools in education, that is the place you want to be. Like I said, it's a pretty big doc. It's like 10 pages long. Again, a lot more resources in here than we can possibly fit in the time. I'll explain shortly which particular content sections we're going to be exploring here this morning. All right. Well, with that said, let's talk about what we are getting into here today. So I do a lot of sessions on AI. If you take a look at the agenda document and you scroll past the table of contents, you'll see under the session resources that I have, I've got at least 4 other main sessions I do, and there's a couple others that are in the works. I do a session just on Google AI tools. I do a session just on AI to support learners. I do a session just on how to manage potential misuse of AI. I do a session just on coding with AI. And then there's some additional ones that are still in the works that'll get added to this soon. So what is this session? Well, this session is more of the general overview session. This one has a little bit of each one of those in there. So we're not going to be able to go into the depth that we would in any of those particular ones, but we're going to hit what I'm going to try to consider the most important information from each of those. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with a just incredibly brief overview of AI. We're just going to touch on that. Then we're going to skip over the classic tools. We're going to go into generative AI tools. We're going to skip over what's coming soon. You can take a look and see that's there. We're going to talk about uses for AI in education. We're going to skip over creating the useful prompts, and we're going to get into addressing misuse. So really, we're hitting 3 main things. What is the current state? What are the generative AI tools that are out there right now? What are we seeing out there right now? We're going to talk about how can these be used in education? How can you and your students benefit from these tools? And then also, what can we do to address potential misuse of those? So those are the big 3 that we're going to use during this session to hit. And then if you want to learn more and go deeper, please take advantage of all the other resources I've got in that document. Each of these links out to its own document and slideshow to go deeper into coding and managing misuse and supporting learners and Google specific tools and things like that. So like I said, we'll begin with an incredibly brief overview of AI. And so all I'm going to say here is, if this is brand new to you, basically, here's what we're talking about today. The idea that AI, we're talking about computer systems that do things that normally a person would be required to do. So, whether it's recognizing, language or patterns or making decisions, solving problems, being able to learn from experience, being able to interact with the environment, doing these things that a person would normally do. If a computer system can do that, we typically call that AI. But what's really got our attention, though, recently is what we call generative AI. This, because we've had AI for a long time. AI is not a new thing. We've definitely had this for a long time. But we now have generative AI, which is a type of AI that is used to create new content. So this is an AI that can learn from large amounts of existing data. So we feed it, billions and billions of pieces of information, and then it can create its own text, images, music, code, and so forth based upon what we fed it. Now, typically, you give it a prompt and it gives you the response, and it's like a chat. You're just having a chat with the AI. And of course, it's important to craft that prompt to get the best output out possible. So many great ways we could use this in education, whether it's personalized learning materials, generating practice questions, giving personalized feedback to students, explaining topics at any level and depth to meet students where they're at. But at the same time, there's also cautions. We need to be careful. AI can be incorrect. It can be biased. We have to be careful with what data that we share. There's concerns about academic integrity. Would students use it to cheat? So all of that also needs to be taken into consideration. Okay, so with that in mind, let's look at where we're at right now. Like I said, I'm going to skip over this portion here. Please feel free to investigate this on your own. The classic AI tools is just a section on how we've been using AI for a long time. Things like Doc's voice typing and automatic captioning, and things like Google Photos, Google Lens, Socratic Auto Draw. There's so many, Gmail Smart Reply, Gmail Smart Compose. These kind of tools we have had for a long time, and they're all listed in there. So if you do want to explore some of the classic AI tools, please do explore those. The links are all in there, organized by the different categories. But what we're going to talk about is what's happening right now, which is generative AI tools. And we're going to look at a couple of categories: language, images, music, and then just some general collections there. So language is really the big one. And this pretty much, came on the scene with ChatGPT. So back in the fall when ChatGPT was launched, and I do have these opened up in my other tabs here. So I got ChatGPT. We'll pop over to these and test them out throughout the session as we go here. But ChatGPT from OpenAI really opened the floodgates for this, the ability to simply go and talk to an AI, ask it any question, and get answers. Shortly after that, Microsoft then took the ChatGPT framework and implemented it into their Bing search, as well as into their Edge browser. And then there's other tools that came out. Poe is a collection of a lot of chatbots. So if you go over to Poe.com, you can access ChatGPT, but you can also get to Claude, which is Anthropic's specific AI chatbot, which is incredibly powerful and amazing and free, an amazing free chatbot called Claude from Anthropic. And then, of course, Google got into the game as well. They've been leading in AI for many, many, many years, but have been a little bit slower to release some of their tools. And they're like, well, I guess we better do it now. And so Bard was Google's generative AI chatbot, similar to ChatGPT and Claude and some of the other ones out there. Now, Bard is available now for you to dive in and test out. It allows you to ask any question. You get multiple responses back for each question you ask. You can also share your responses, export your responses. You can speak your prompts. So you can just talk to Bard, and it can also speak to you. It can read the responses aloud to you, which is great to have that text-to-speech and speech-to-text option. It also has the ability to take the responses and put them into different tones. So after it gives you a response, you can say, I want to take this response and make it simpler, longer, shorter, more professional, or more casual. You can also pin your responses, come back to them later if you need to pick up a chat. It includes images. This is awesome. Yes, when you're using Google Bard, you can get images in the responses, and you can upload images into your prompts and have it discuss the image with you. Awesome stuff. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Let's just take it for a quick spin. Now, again, we could do this in Claude on Poe. We could do this in ChatGPT. I'm just going to do it in Bard real quick right now, just as a quick example. So let's say I'm a student and I am learning about alligators in school, and I want to. You can see I've had that discussion with it before. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to say, hey, what are the main characteristics of alligators? Now, again, I can just hit the little microphone and speak this as well, but I'll just go ahead and type it in. I'll say, what are the main characteristics of alligators? So I'm learning about alligators in school, and I want to make sure that I get what is going on here. Well, by asking that question, now I get the generated response. So it's telling me about the body, the snout, the teeth, the diet, the habit, and so forth, giving a couple of key facts here and some sources that I could use to go to get more information about it. A couple of key things to note here. Notice we do have other drafts. If we click up here, there is a draft 2 and a draft 3. And so each of these are a slightly different version of the response. And you may find that one of them is a better match for you than another one of those drafts. If I scroll all the way down to the bottom, I can give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. I can also come here and Google it. I can say, well, in addition to what I got here, I want to actually run a Google search for this, and I can click there and I can go out and actually run a Google search on this topic as well. Or notice I can hit this little modify button here, and that's where we can adjust this. So maybe this is good information, but I just really need the basics. Well, I could say, let's simplify that, or I could say, make it longer, make it more professional. We'll just say, let's simplify it. Let's get a simpler version of that response, give that a moment. And now it's going to regenerate that, but now it has cut out some of the additional information. It's trimmed it up. It's made it a simpler response. Now, at the same time, we could also make it simplified just by changing our prompt. So I could have said something like, explain this in terms that a first grader would understand, And so in a case like that, I'm the one who's adding the modification to it in the prompt and saying, okay, let's put this in simpler terms. And so now it is really making this a much cleaner, simpler explanation of alligators. Now, what if I was curious how they're different than crocodiles? Well, I could just throw in something like, how are crocodiles different? And because this is a conversation, I don't have to start all over again and say, so how are crocodiles different than alligators? Well, it knows we're talking about alligators. So it's going to, pick up that conversation and say, well, here's some of the differences, the snout, the teeth, the habitat. It even does a little table for me to show me alligators versus crocodiles, which is helpful. Well, maybe that is helpful, but I'm a visual person. I could say, hey, can you show me pictures of both? And so now, because Bard is able to include images, I can now see, okay, well, these are some pictures of alligators. Here's some pictures of crocodiles. You can see some of the key differences between them. Well, what if I have a picture and I'm curious what it is? I can use the little plus button next to my prompt here, and I can upload an image. And I'm going to go into my resources, and let's grab that downloaded picture there of the crocodile. And then I could say, which one is this? So if I have something and I want to learn more about it, I can even upload the picture. And basically what it's doing, it's using Google Lens. Google Lens is a tool that Google has to analyze images. And so it's saying, hey, what you just sent me is a crocodile. Notice some of these key things about it. So there you go. Now, that's a really quick run through of just some of the basic tools. Now, you can do a lot of this in ChatGPT, a lot of this in Claude, and a lot of this in the other AI chat tools as well. But hopefully that gives you a quick overview of what that currently is looking like there. All right. Now, so that's great. So that's one of the current things, is the ability to have a chat conversation with AI. But now we're starting to notice we're getting AI baked into our tools. So it's not just go out to the chat bot and chat, but the AI is coming into our tools. So like in Google Docs, the ability to interact with the AI right inside of Google Docs. Now, this is something that is in the process of rolling out. If you do not have this yet, no worries. It is in a limited availability right now. I do have access to it, so I'm going to show you what this looks like. And so between now and when it's officially out to everybody, it may continue to change and evolve. But the idea is, if I pop over to a Google document, I get this help me write option. So anytime I'm writing, there's this little sparkly pencil there. And so let's say I'm wanting to write a letter to the parents of my 8th grade students. I taught 8th grade math when I was teaching, and I want to welcome them to the new school year. And I'm having a little trouble getting started. Well, instead of going over to a chat bot, right here inside of my Google document, I could click on my sparkly help me write this pencil, and I could say, help me write a letter to parents of my 8th grade math students welcoming them to the new school year. And it's going to go ahead and chug through that, gonna generate something up for me. And just like what we've seen before, if I want to, I can refine this. I can make it formal, shortened, elaborated, rephrased, or I could just regenerate it. Now, if I'm happy with this, I go, yeah, that looks pretty good. I can just click insert and it'll drop it in there. And of course, I would want to go through now and adjust this, modify this, so it includes exactly the way I would like to have this message be to the parents. Or maybe I want to maybe I want to go a little bit deeper in here. I'm talking about providing tools and resources. Maybe I want to grab this paragraph, and instead of having it generate something new, I could have it modify existing content. I could click on the pencil and I could say something like, expand on this with more practical examples. This feels too general for me. So now what it's going to do is it's going to take just the part I highlighted and it's going to try to rework that. And again, if I'm happy with that, I can say, yep, that's better. Let's replace that. And now I feel like I've got a much better letter to get started with here. So there we go. Good stuff. All right. So let's keep on going. So we're seeing this embedded right in our tools, like Canva is doing the same thing with their Magic Write. So right inside of the tool, you can get AI to help you. Gmail, same thing. AI getting embedded right inside of Gmail. I do have access to this one as well. Should be coming soon to everybody. And even Google Search, just running a search. This one is available too. If you want to sign up for some of these, since they're not all rolled out yet, I do include the waitlist links here in the agenda. So like if you want to try some of these out, you'll notice a lot of times there'll be like a link that says waitlist. Or for example, for Google Search, here's the waitlist link. You can sign up to get early access to these. They will be rolling out to everybody eventually. But for right now, you can sign up for the waitlist. So in Google Search, you can just type a question into search. And instead of just the regular Google results you get, you can have a conversation with the chat bot right there inside of search as well. And on and on and on. There are just so many neat tools. Now, the next thing, how about images? So it's not just language generation, it's also image generation. That is one of the other really big things that's happening in AI right now. Tools like DALL-E, where you explain, here's what I want a picture of. And it's not that it's Googling and finding a picture. No. It's creating an image from scratch. It is taking all the images it's ever been trained on, and it's making a new image based upon what you've asked for. So you've got tools like Imagine from Google that does this. Bing has their image creator that's powered by DALL-E. Canva has their text-to-image generator built right in as well. Adobe Firefly does this. And now Google is rolling this out for Google Slides. Now, again, I've got access to this, so I'm going to show it to you real quick. It's another one that you can sign up for early access if you would like. But the idea is that while I'm in Google Slides, if I'm looking for a picture and I can't quite find the right picture, I can just ask it, hey, can you help me, help me with a picture that matches these characteristics? And it will generate it for you. So let's say I'm a student and I'm writing a story. Once upon a time, there was a castle on a hill at night above a river and a forest with a moon in the sky. And I want a picture that is exactly that. So let's say I copy that text. If I come up here to insert image, in addition to uploading an image or searching the web for an image, I now have the help me visualize option. If I click on that, that opens up the AI over here. And so this is their Duet AI suite, they're calling it, because it works, in tandem with you inside of your Google tools. So I could come in here and I could say, okay, I'm looking for a castle on a hill at night above a river and a forest with a moon in the sky. Now I can just hit create, or I can choose a style. Do I want it to be, photography, vector art, watercolor, et cetera, or I could put the style in here as well. I'll just go ahead and have it create this off of that simple description there. And typically it takes about 20 seconds or so, like it says, to do that. And what we're going to get are usually 8 versions of the image that we can pick from. And there we go. So here are 8 different options. If I decide that I like one of these, I can just give a click on there. It'll drop it right into my slideshow. There we go. And if I didn't like it, I could recreate more. I could go up, change the style, or I could add in my own additional descriptions there. If you want to dive more into that one, I do have an entire blog post I did on this. In the agenda document under AI tools for images. This blog post and YouTube video will give you a lot more details about how this works, including lots more examples of ones I tried, like vector art, sketches, watercolor. I then asked it to do it in the style of Van Gogh, pixel art, even Lego bricks. So a lot of possibilities you have with that. All right, so that gets us pretty much up to where we're at right now. We're going to shift gears here in just a second to talk about ways this can be used in the classroom, and then we'll also talk about ways to help address potential misuse. As I wrap up this portion of it, just let you know that there are so many other tools that I mentioned. And so I do have a section called AI Tool Collections, and that's at the bottom of that portion of generative AI. And this includes things like Futurepedia and Future Tools and all things AI, and there's an AI for that. And these are just amazing websites to be able to go out and get, like here's 2,000, AI tools that are, or almost 2,000 AI tools where you can search through all of these different AI tools, narrow them down for what you might be looking for. I realize we have just scratched the surface. All right, well, let's go ahead and keep moving. We got two more topics I'd like to talk about in the next 20 minutes. So we're going to move quickly through these, but I hope that as I share the next two topics, anything you want more details on, remember that as you scroll down through my document here, I have examples for pretty much everything I'm going to mention here in a lot more detail to go into. Please do continue to share questions as we go. But what we're going to do now is talk about uses for AI in education and then talk about dealing with potential misuse. So when it comes to uses for AI in education, in the agenda document, I've got a whole section on here with examples for reading, writing, conversation, feedback, coding, personal tutor, YouTube, tasks. And for almost every one of these, you'll see next to it something that says example. And so what I've done to try to save time here is I basically recorded my conversation with Bard or ChatGPT or Claude or whichever one I was chatting with and put it in there so that you can see, well, what did Eric actually type in? What was his prompt? What was the response? So like, if we want to talk about, any one of these, like, to rewrite text at a lower reading level, if you click this link, it'll open up an example, and that document is going to show you that whole process there of, okay, here's where I asked it, can you rewrite this text at a lower level? And here's the response that I got from that. And so these documents that are linked in, this is pretty much what I'm going to be running through right now, just because the time it takes for the AI to generate some of these responses, we may run out of time. So I'm going to run through a bunch of examples here of some ideas for how we could use AI in education. And I'd love to hear from you. Please share some of your favorite ideas, or if you've tried some of these things, how has it worked for you? So one of the first things we can do is we can address reading concerns when it comes to using AI. And let's just start off with that example we had, figuring out the reading level of a document and then building from there. So I'm going to jump into that particular doc. So what I did was I asked, hey, can you tell me what the Lexile level is of a text? And both ChatGPT and Bard said, absolutely, I can do that. So I fed it some text. I'm on the Boston Tea Party. I said, well, what Lexile level would you say this text is? And I got back, well, around a 940 or around an 1100. Okay, or around 1000, sorry. And so I'm like, okay, great. I said, could you rewrite that text at a 700 Lexile level? And sure thing, ChatGPT and Bard both regenerated that text at a lower level. Well, what if I want to take it down to a 450 Lexile? Same thing. Here is that same text, but now at a lower level. Could you make it at a higher level? Yep, we can do that as well. And then I went into other things like, can you generate reading comprehension questions? Sure thing. Can you generate answers for those reading comprehension questions? Great. Other things. Can you find 10 key words that might be the most challenging for students and make a bulleted list with definitions? You bet. Mercantile, infringement, coercive. And so it's pulling out these key words and giving definitions for those. Think about providing that to a student. Hey, you're about ready to read this article. Here's a list of some key words you might want to be aware of as you head into this. Other things, can you give a bullet point summary of the original text? You bet. There you go. So right there, that's just a whole bunch of examples of taking a reading passage and being able to make adjustments to that passage or make content to go alongside of that passage to help our students understand it better. Now, we can also create extension activities from a text. We can do DOK leveled questions. We can say, I need DOK 1, 2, 3, 4 level questions. We can rewrite text in a different style. My example here was the famous speech from Hamlet, his to be or not to be speech. And I said, hey, can you rewrite this? Do it that a fifth grade student could understand, keep all the same content, just make it so the student can understand it. And there we go. Here is that speech rewritten in a manner that makes it a lot more clear as to what is being said. Or we could have AI create stories. You want students to read, but maybe they have a specific interest and you don't have a story that covers the thing the student is interested in. Give it the characters, the items, the events, tell it the reading level, and the AI can generate a story for the students. Now we can jump over to writing. Lots of possibilities here. Generating writing prompts, generating story elements. So if it's writing prompts, it could be things like, hey, I want to write an essay on the topic of vacations, but I don't know where to begin. What are some writing prompts? Here you go. Here are some things that you might want to write about. Or I'm wanting to write an essay about the American Revolution. What's something that might be a good topic that I could explore? Here you go. Here's a bunch of places to begin. Or you're writing a story and you just need some creative oomph. You could say, okay, I need a name for this city. It's a city in the clouds for my sci-fi story. What could be some good names? Well, here you go. Here's some names from ChatGPT. Here's some names from Bard. Or I need a supervillain with the powers of a platypus. What could his name be? And so here we get. So whether we're just needing a little inspiration while we're writing, this is a great way to get that as well. Another cool thing would be round robin writing with AI. And so what I mean by this is where you and the AI take turns writing a story. And so this is an example of one that I did. And I did this using the Docs AI, where I used the help me write option right there inside of Docs, but you could do it a bunch of other ways. And so the italicized is from Google's AI, the non-italicized is mine, and so Google starts off, I'm not sure if I'm going crazy, but I think I can talk to animals, and then I write the next line. I was sitting on the couch reading a book with my cat Sparky when I swear I heard somebody say, so how's the book? And basically we just go back and forth. The AI writes a line and I write a line and we write a story. So a neat way to engage with using AI to help encourage creative writing in that case. All right. We can also use AI to generate model writing as well as flawed writing to serve as exemplars for students. Conversation. Have a debate with AI on a topic. I did this on how do you pronounce GIF? Is it GIF or GIF? And so I gave it a prompt where I clearly laid out, here's what we're going to do. We're going to have this debate, and it's going to be 4 rounds. We'll do a 4-round debate, and each round has 4 parts. Somebody makes a statement, somebody rebuts it, then you respond to the rebuttal, then the other person gives concluding remarks. And here's our topic. And so I let ChatGPT go first, and it gave its argument about why it should be pronounced with a soft G. Then I responded, then it responded, then I concluded, and then we did the second argument, then we did the third argument, then we did the fourth argument. It was fantastic. It was a really neat way to really think about defending my rationale. Or speaking to AI as a character from a book, from history, from a certain job. This is awesome. For this one, what I did was I talked about, let's say I'm a social studies class. I'm a social studies class and I'm learning about Native Americans. And rather than just reading an article about it, have a conversation with a 21-year-old male of the Iroquois tribe living in upstate New York in 1650. So basically, I gave it that set. I said, here's what I want you to do. For this activity, you're going to take on that role. I'm going to interview you, and I want you to respond as if you were that person. And so here I go. What is your name? Can you tell me about your tribe? What is your daily life like? Have you had any interactions with the Europeans? Can you tell me a story from your folklore? And so here I am having a discussion with the AI in that role. And it's a very engaging way for students to learn content. Giving feedback, of course, evaluating student writing and providing feedback on how it can be improved. Lots of examples there where we have it read through the student's document and then give suggestions for how that can be improved. Coding, I do an entire session. I just recorded a video the other day. It's linked in. I got about a 1 hour video on using AI to help you code, and it could just be creating, educational games that students can play that get embedded right into Google Sites, or it could be creating your own custom add-ons for docs and slides and sheets. Got lots and lots and lots of examples of how you don't have to know a single thing about coding. You can just describe to the AI what it is you are wanting, and you work back and forth with it as it helps you create these coded examples. A personal tutor, explaining topics at any level, exploring topics to any depth, helping students work through a problem step by step, providing students with essay or knowledge questions and then giving them feedback on their responses. An example of this, let's say working through a problem step by step. Here's one I did with math. Let's say I'm trying to solve a story problem. Well, the prompt is really important here. Again, this is where it comes to giving the right prompt. In this case, I said, help me work through a math story problem, but do not give me the answer at any point. Just ask me questions one at a time to help me solve the problem myself. If I get stuck, you can give me some general suggestions to get me back on track, but don't ever give me the actual answer. And here's the problem. And so I gave the problem about Jack deciding, does he want to spend the $25 one time to get a membership card at a bookstore so that he can now buy books for $8 each? Or is he better off just to not spend the $25 for the membership and just buy them at $12 each? When does it get better to spend the $25? And here we have ChatGPT taking me through step by step, like, okay, let's talk about this. If you're spending $25 for a membership and it's $8 per book and you're buying in books, let's just start with that. What would that look like as an expression, and then what would it look like if you didn't, buy the card? And okay, let's say we now want to figure out, how many books will they equal? So how would we do that? It's walking me through step by step. At one point it tells me that I need, that this would be a good time to isolate in. I'm like, well, what do you mean isolate in? It goes, okay, well, that means getting the variable by itself, and then later I make a mistake, I end up subtracting incorrectly, and it goes, oh, there seems to be a little mistake here. Can you take a look at the subtraction again? And so it's never giving me the answer, but it's walking me through. It's that personal tutor to help. Other things, using AI to analyze the transcript from a YouTube video. If the students need to watch a video, creating a study guide or summaries for the videos. And of course, just helping you, assisting you write emails, lesson plans, newsletters, assessments, and rubrics. All right, so that's a whole bunch of ideas for how AI could be helpful to you and or your students. But we would be wrong to not talk about the potential of misuse. Absolutely. This is a powerful tool, and it could be used inappropriately as well. So the last thing I'm going to talk about here, and then I'll do my best to come back around to questions, is addressing AI misuse. Now, again, I've got a full 1-hour session I do just on this. So we're doing a 10-minute version. So I apologize. This is going to be a much, much quicker version of the addressing misuse content, but you can get access all of this here in the agenda. All of the details are here in the agenda for this. So basically, when it comes to addressing misuse, I am not here to say I have the answer. Please do not hear me say that. I am still learning with you. I want to learn from you. These are just some suggestions. These are 8 different ideas that I think are viable and important for us to consider when addressing potential misuse. I guarantee I'm missing stuff. I want to hear from you. I want to learn along with you, but I want to share, at least at the moment, things that I pulled together that I think are valuable. So these are the 8 things that I would encourage you to explore. So the first thing is just developing guidelines. It's important to know, what do you believe about AI in your classroom? So I have an entire blog post that goes into great detail about this, but really what it comes down to is I pulled together 10 questions that you should ask. Well, 11, including what do you teach, but 10 more philosophical questions. And these are questions you really need to go through and think about about, like what tools will you use? What are your goals for AI in your classroom? How do you view the role of AI in education? What is appropriate for AI to do? What are your concerns about AI in your classroom? What are your expectations for how students should use it? How do you plan to monitor AI? Do you have any existing policies that could be used in this? How will you address potential problems? How do you want to approach accessibility and inclusivity? And how do you plan to address data privacy issues? The point is, it may take you a while to answer all of these questions, but these are the questions you need to be talking to your team about, your school, your grade level, your subject area, or just yourself as you work through them. Now, the beauty is once you do that, we can now use AI to help us. And so what I do is I answer all 10 of those questions, and then I give it this prompt. Go back to Bard, go back to ChatGPT and say, below are my answers to key questions about my philosophy of AI. Using this content, generate a document titled Student AI Guidelines that I'm going to give to my class that's going to organize and consolidate all of this together. And so that's what I did. And so if you want to see my example here under setting AI guidelines, this blog post will take you out to that full, and I'll zoom in a bit so you guys can see this a little bit better there. This is the full blog post where I go through each question and I give answers, and they're not necessarily the greatest answers in the world, but I give answers as an example, and then I feed all those answers in, and then here's what got generated. Here's ChatGPT's version of my student AI guidelines, and here's Bard's version of my student AI guidelines. Now, I probably want to go through and clean those up a little bit, but it's really good. It's a really good starting point to say, here's how we are going to address AI in our classroom. So that's a really important starting point. Other things would be, let's work through the rest of these 8 tips and tricks. One is educating students about AI. We need to have these discussions. We need to talk about positive uses, academic integrity, data privacy, how AI can be inaccurate or unreliable and biased. And I've got lots of examples linked into the main misuse presentation that I do that you can share with students on these. Next up, consider alternate assignments and assessments. If you're worried about students using AI to cheat, well, there's tons of other ways we can have students do assignments and do assessments that are more difficult to cheat on with AI, whether it's in-person writing, oral examinations, performances, debates, speeches, classroom discussions, problem-based learning, group projects, internships, game-based learning. So many possibilities we can use that do not lend themselves as much to cheating. Having said that, though, we also, I think, want to lean into AI and say, let's also do assignments that actually use AI. Let's make it be a part of our instruction. And that is a positive to help it not get misused by saying, let's do assignments where the students critique AI, have AI write a report and have the students evaluate it. Do co-writing, do that round robin writing where the students work with the AI. Have that AI debate like I did on how do we pronounce GIF, GIF for GIF. Use AI as part of our assignments, but then also talk about proper citation. So understanding that chances are students are going to use AI to assist them in their work. Well, as long as it's within the guidelines of what you say is appropriate in your class, maybe it's like, okay, is it okay for AI to help the student brainstorm? If that's okay, great. Maybe for you, it's okay to have the AI give feedback after the student has written so they can do some editing. If that's good, I love that. That sounds like a great idea. Well, what I encourage people to consider is doing an AI credits section of your work. So here's an example, and this is all linked in. And the idea is to make this transparent, to say, okay, listen, when you turn in your work, simply tell me, how did you use AI? Put at the bottom of your document, put a section called AI credits. And so here is my first draft. I'm writing a little essay about the pros and cons of electric vehicles. And so there's my first draft. And then here under the AI credits, I say, okay, here's what I did. I said, give me a bullet point outline for a report on the pros and cons of electric vehicles. And here's the response I got. It's not writing the report for me, but it was saying, here's some key things you might want to think about. Then I wrote my report, And then here's my next prompt: provide me feedback on how I could improve my report. I pasted my report in and I said, hey, here's some things you might want to do to clean this up. Here's some suggestions for improvement. And so then I've got my first draft, and then I've got my final version where I took those considerations into mind to improve it. The idea is about transparency. It's about not having AI be this secret. It's like, no, if we're using it, if it's coming alongside you in ways that fit the guidelines for the classroom, be transparent about it. Now, if there are concerns like, oh, I'm worried somebody's abusing it, then yeah, absolutely. We do need to stay updated on how this can be happening, and we need to periodically check for misuse. It's an oldie, but it's a goodie. I would say use version history. Tell students, hey, listen, you have to do your work in Google Docs. That's the way we're going to do it in this class. We're not going to type it in something else and then copy and paste it. You need to do your work in Google Docs because I need to look at the version history to see you actually did the work. So for example, here are two essays. I'll just pull these over as examples here. And they're the same essay, but one of them I typed up line by line and the other I copied and pasted. So if I go File, Version History, and I say See Version History, in this first one here, you see I get a very detailed breakdown of there was nothing, and then they wrote a word, they wrote a sentence, they wrote a little bit of an outline, they wrote another sentence, they wrote a little bit more. That makes sense. That's what you would see in normal version history. But in this one, if I go into version history, there's two entries. There is nothing, and then there is everything. Well, nobody types that fast. That's an example of, okay, we need to have a discussion about this. Tools like DraftBack are another awesome thing. This is a free extension that plays your version history like a video. So you can watch as the student is writing the document, and you get a graph of all the time that they worked on it. Now, there are also a lot of AI checkers, but I would not recommend using them as anything other than the beginning of a conversation. They are not 100% accurate. And so I'd always be careful about that. Last thing I would say would be, please engage your parents and guardians. It's important that at home you get the support for this as well. Help them understand what your class guidelines are and help them understand what can be done with AI. And finally, stay up to date. At the very bottom of the document, I have an up-to-date section where I've got what are ways to stay informed, great books about AI, YouTube channels, communities to join, podcasts to listen to, newsletters to sign up for, and courses and videos you can watch. And I'll continue to add more and more to that as we go. All right. I know we are knocking on the end of our time here. We're really, really, really close to the end of our time. So first of all, I'm going to say thank you so much for letting me chat with you guys here today about AI. Everything that I mentioned is at bit.ly/Kurtz-AI. I'm going to turn it back over to you guys. And if there's any last minute questions I can answer, I'll be happy to come back around to answer those. And for all my other resources, check out my blog at controlaltachieve.com. And to connect with me, go to bit.ly/CAA-connect, where you'll find all of my social media links, email, newsletter, and more.